Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt and this is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today, and we're in the middle of a relatively relaxing week compared to some of the other weeks that we've been dealing with. I don't know what it is, Dean, but somehow it seems like, from my perspective anyway, maybe it's just me raising my vibration, but all the crises and chaos seems to have gone away.
Right. Things are kind
Uh,
of quiet right now, right?
you're
Yeah.
getting that too, then, okay? It's not
Well,
just
yeah,
me.
things are really quieting down and, it might be just the events and stuff for people personally, but yeah, I read relatively quiet for the most part. Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, that
That's
means that people are shifting
great.
vibration, you
That
know?
is a great thing. That is
And,
a
and the
great
best part
thing.
is they don't even have to know that they're changing their vibration, and they're doing it anyway.
Well, and what I'm really excited about is I think I started seeing it, a trend here, maybe yesterday. It's, of course, been going on for a while now, but a lot of states now are, and not to focus on it, but are starting to lift their restrictions on COVID.
Yeah, that's true. It's beginning
And
to
I think
shift.
which is great because not only do I believe that the collective vibration is getting higher, but it's allowing that negative vibration to dissipate eventually, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I
Yeah.
yeah, so I just thought it was great. I thought it was encouraging, and regardless of people thoughts on it and everything, because it does invoke a lot of different emotions, but
It does.
it was encouraging to say the least. And I was like, oh, that's awesome for so many folks, and it was great to see. So
It's also good to
good things
see.
ahead. Got lots of changes, but good things ahead. So
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure.
It's also good to see. I kind of watch every once in a while to see what's going on with the COVID infection rate and so forth.
Right.
And since the end of December, when they started releasing vaccines and so forth in small numbers, the curve is starting to go down. It hasn't gotten any news coverage in
Sure.
that way, but the
Sure.
curve has definitely been going down. So, I mean, we're hearing all this talk now about,
Sure.
more to come, and it's going to get even
Yep.
worse and so
Yep.
forth. But
Yep.
that's not what the numbers are showing yet. So
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
holding out hope that maybe
I
people are going to buy into their higher vibe, higher angels things.
right. Well, and I'm going to stay on the aspect of higher vibrations and all in the healing aspect, because I really have personally, and I've known this, and I've been aware of this, is that I'm challenged a lot when it comes to the numbers and the whole thing around it, and I'm just like, is that accurate? Is that, and
Oh
I
yeah.
don't really know, but then I take it as a learning aspect, right? And so I was like, regardless of where it is, this is what they're saying. Regardless if it's high, low, in the middle, doesn't matter. And so for me, when I look at it, it's more an event to learn from, even if I'm personally challenged by it.
Mhm.
And that's how I've kind of taken this. And of course, obviously not going about things ignorantly. Of course, always washing hands and wearing
Sure.
masks and all that great stuff, but doing our part. But yeah, so
Yeah. I,
definitely a
I
lot of pieces to the pie.
I have to say that I have washed my hands more times in the last year than in the last 40 combined. I'm
Right.
just saying.
Right. Well, it was for me, I think every time we have two, children, and every time one of the kids would get sick, being like, oh, kind of was like red alert,
Yeah,
everybody
right.
start, regardless of your hand washing habits, now just do it stupidly, because really you think about it, when it comes to the cold, that is a huge one. Knock on wood, like we've been staying away from the doctor, so
An
lots of
interesting,
him.
little like, interesting side note that has come out of all this. The flu rate is down dramatically for the reason that we're doing all this stuff with
Isn't that
COVID.
interesting?
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, and it makes me wonder, are they calling it something else? Are they, right? It's like, did it go away and it just became something else? I mean, I don't know,
Well, I
but
think we're going to try to avoid the conspiracy theory side of it,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. So, but it just makes me chuckle a little bit sometimes. And I'm like, but again, I go in observance, and regardless of where you are, and what you believe or don't believe, that's okay. And that's why I love about not only the show is because we're all here to hold space for everybody, regardless of
Yes.
where you are. And it's not about taking sides. It's just about coming together as a collective. And like I said, finding your daily dose of happy, right? So it is something to be very
Totally.
grateful for, that, things are on the mend. Things are looking up, for the most part. So that's a good thing. That's a great thing.
And I have to say, that's something I'm very proud of where the show is concerned, because I know for sure, we have people who are on both sides of the
Sure.
divide. We have listeners who are on both sides of the divide, and yet we manage to overcome the divide,
Right.
which is,
Right.
that's a pretty cool thing these days. You don't
Right.
get that very often. Most
Right.
people are used to hearing from, celebrities or newscasters or politicians or,
Hmm.
sports figures, whatever, about how bad the divide is.
Right.
But you don't often hear people say, hey, we're overcoming the divide. That's a
Right.
fairly rare thing. So I'm proud of that. I think that all of
I,
us deserve a pat on the back for that.
I think it's a tremendous thing to bring awareness of platforms and organizations that are coming together and not separating. There's too
Yes.
much. There's so much separating out there in the world, especially today. There always has been, but there's so many things that would divide us, and how many things are out there that bring us together, regardless
Mm,
of your beliefs. And
right.
I think that's just a tremendous, tremendous thing.
It
So,
is.
yeah, so it's powerful. So,
So I have a couple of housekeeping notes to deal with.
all
First
right.
one, and I've been trying to remember to do it every show. I hadn't remembered every single time, so I said, okay, today I'm going to do it right near the top of the hour. So we had a little bit of I had a little bit of a disagreement with Google about the LOA Today app, and of course they have to approve the Android versions of the app, and I won't go into all the details of it, but let's just say we resolved the differences in a way that makes it so that I put a new version of the app up, which meant that the version that many people have will never update because that version is going away. So what I'm trying to make it a point to tell people is, if you can look at your screen, it'll tell you what version you have up in the top right corner. If your version ends in 8.3 or less, you need to uninstall that app completely and then reinstall from scratch. If you try to do it the other way around, you'll have all kinds of problems. Don't do it the other way around. Don't install the new one first. Uninstall the old one first. But if you do that, everything will be fine. Uninstall the old one, install the new one, and then you'll be good with the updates from now on automatically. No problem there. This is only for Android users. It's not for iPhones, not for PCs, not for Macs. It's only for Androids. Lucky Android users, you. But but please do it. I mean, I know a little over 10% of users have actually made the switch so far, but I want to get it up there. I know there are some people who just, they'll install an app, they won't use it, and that's fine. But for people who do have the app and who are regular listeners, I want to really make sure you get the message that, you need to uninstall the old one if it ends in 8.3 or less. That's the version number in the top right corner. If you have that, then uninstall it, reinstall the new one, and you'll be good to go. So that's the first piece of housekeeping. The second one, this is a much more fun one, and maybe it's actually a little bit of a point for conversation with us. About a week and a half ago, in the midst of doing a Friday show with Rita Giganti, I just tossed out some of the things that I was working on where my talk is concerned that I'm putting together. I'm trying to reach out to colleges, colleges, universities, and other organizations too. And one of the main things that I'm proposing to do in my talk is to provide, hands-on ways to accomplish the goal that I'm proposing. The focus of the topic of the talk rather is building self-love.
Right.
And I have a number of different things that we're used to, various kinds of affirmations and processes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm basically repackaging them for a college audience that doesn't know anything about the law of attraction. I'm not even using the phrase law of attraction at all in the talk. But the processes are very practical. They work for anybody. It's just a question of how you phrase it so that it doesn't scare people off with it being too woo or something. Like that. Keep the woo woo out and put the scientific stuff in. It's like that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was telling Rita some of the ideas I had for doing this, and she was loving them. I said, maybe we should do like a special games day where listeners could actually, log into the show. We'll probably do it here on Zoom, maybe on a weekend or something like that. And we'll just lead everybody through a bunch of these different processes.
Oh, there you go.
So I proposed it kind of off the top of my head there without even giving it any thought, and got a little bit of feedback from listeners. Some listeners said, yeah, I'm really interested in that. Thing is, I don't really want to do it unless I know I have some solid interest. So that's why I'm bringing it up again, to see if anyone else is interested other than those who have responded so far. So if that sounds interesting to you, use the LOA Today app, assuming you actually have upgraded on Android, and the rest of you guys already have the right version. But send me a note, or just send it to my email address, walt@loatoday.net, and let me know that you think it's interesting and it's something you'd like to do. Because if I get enough interest in doing this, I'm thinking I may actually do it. I don't really want to do it if it's only going to be a handful. Not that there's anything wrong with a handful of listeners. I just, I want to make sure it's actually worth the time to go do this thing. So
absolutely,
got to put it out there that way.
I think that'd be a pretty powerful, like, little, how would you say, workshop, in a sense of, and if you already know those basic skills, I mean, doesn't hurt to refresh them or to go back over them. Like, hey, this is pretty cool, because everybody has their own unique way of teaching, right? Or going about things. So I think,
and everybody has their own things that they like doing. I mean, different people like different processes,
Right.
Like for me, I hate journaling, but some people swear by journaling, just absolutely love journaling, So, different strokes for different folks. That's fine. But I figure give people a few things to try out, and they can maybe adopt something new. Deborah, one of our listeners, wrote in. She'd been listening to me talking for months about mirror exercises, so she decided to try them. I don't know if I told you this one.
No,
but she decided to try them, and now this is something you normally try for 30 days, and the reason most people try it is to get that tape that keeps playing in your head to stop playing. That's what motivated me to do it. It's also a self-love building exercise. She told me she was getting amazing results after 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that?
That is crazy. That's unheard of.
Yeah. Well, apparently not unheard of, because we just heard about it.
Well, kudos to her. I mean, wow. Those, all I can say is, wow. You don't, you typically don't hear results like that quickly, but it's really cool. That you hear, it gives credence, I think, Walt, that to how powerful, that exercise is. And if somebody is aligned that deeply to that way of, focus, if you will, how quickly it can happen for somebody, right?
That's true.
Obviously, it's not the same for everybody. Understand? I don't want somebody getting discouraged and quitting, like, oh, it's 2 days, I'm giving up. It's like, but
to be honest, for most people, the first 2 days, and I know you've done them, so you know what this is like, but the first 2 days for most people is all about getting over the humiliation and embarrassment of saying these things.
Like, this is stupid. What am I doing?
Exactly.
It's like,
but like you said, Deborah's a pretty advanced practitioner, so she was already running high vibe when she tried it. So that's why she got the big jump.
Sure.
But I would argue that anybody can get a fairly quick jump. The question is, will you stick it out long enough to get it?
Right.
Because it's so easy, like you said, to just say, oh, this isn't worth it. Just, I only tried it for 30 seconds, but I'm done.
Well, and I think that's a great analogy for anything, Walt, because I've seen that with my own students. I've seen that with other folks, saying regardless what they're learning, what the modality or practice is, and they just give up after a few practices because of frustration, because in their mind they've constructed this box, if you will, saying it has to show up like this. And when it doesn't, they get so frustrated, mad, that they give up, instead of going, you know what, okay, tomorrow I'm going to give it one more chance and one more chance, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like a magic wand, is something just changes. And it's like, whoa. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's, like the angels come out and, shake you around. It's like you have this huge epiphany or massive change. But um, for some, what I would share is if you're going through the frustration part and saying, oh, it's not happening fast enough or it's not showing up the way that I wanted, keep going because it will.
Mm, it
It
does.
will happen. You have to trust that it will happen. And
And a lot of people will notice it quicker than I did. Let's put it that way. I mean, there are probably going to be some people who were like me. With me, I was like, 17, 20 days into it
sure.
before I finally noticed there was actually a change and it had been going on for a while, but I hadn't paid attention.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
easy to do. Well, first of all, everybody who's been a long time listener here knows, like I do the money game that Daniel Mangena wrote his
Oh,
ebook.
okay.
And I just completed phase one. Now, each of the phases has 5 different steps. And basically what you're doing is 5 different times you're attracting a slightly larger amount of money than the last time.
Nice.
This is like, fun money out of clear blue sky. It's not something
Sure.
you went out to work for, right? And I have this history of getting the money in and forgetting that it was actually part of the money game. Like, oh yeah, nice check. Okay, great. And just dismissing it entirely. Oh yeah, I attracted that. Right. I forgot.
Oh, funny.
But I'm getting better at that. But the point is that you can do the same thing with,
Right.
clearing out the talk in your head, because if you're so used to having that tape playing, which I certainly was, it had been playing for years, when it finally goes away or even calms down a bit, you don't notice it because you're just so used to having it there. And then
Sure.
it takes a while. It took me like 3 or 4 days before I finally recognized. And I think it was because I was doing a show. I think I was doing it with Cindy
Oh,
Chavez because she was the one I had first told her I was going to do it. And I said, I just realized something. That voice in my head got quieter. And then a week later, it was silent.
there you go.
Oh my God.
I love it. I
Like,
love that.
stunned.
Well, sometimes self-reflection is really huge because, when we feel that we haven't gained an inch, right? We've
Mhm.
been slogging around in the trenches, so to speak, for, feels like years. And, and we feel again or think in our head that we're not gaining any traction. But sometimes when we take a pause and do some self-reflection and be like, and like you shared, Walt, about, oh my goodness, like when I was doing that, the inner tape got quiet or it went silent. I don't remember the last time I heard it. Wait a minute. I was so busy doing,
Right.
in the moment, like I forgot about it. And I was just going through the motions, so to speak, of I got to do it again. I got to do it again. I got to, and yeah, very powerful stuff. And I think there's a lot of us that do that as well, that we're missing like, holy crap, dude, you're light years of, it's like, really? I don't feel like I've been doing anything. And here we are just, just doing a lot of great things and just, I don't think I'm doing anything here. What am I doing?
It
So,
often takes having that longer term perspective, seeing it over a course of weeks, months, even
right.
years, before we finally look back and say, oh, wow, yeah, I guess I did do something. It didn't
Right.
feel like it day to day, it felt the same. Day to
Right.
day, it felt like life was going on the way it had always gone on. But now that I look back on it, oh my God, I really did shift. I really did change. And I didn't even know it. How about that?
Right. Right. No, absolutely. I completely concur with what you're saying. I've been there. So yeah, totally get it.
And the idea of the games day is most of these processes that we get taught or that we teach, um, whether they be, stuff that the various teachers teach. Abraham Hicks, they've got like 22 of them. Any of the teachers have various processes that they teach. They're usually do it for yourself. The mirror exercise, it's looking in a mirror yourself, right?
Yeah.
But the reason I came up with the idea of a games day is most of these processes, maybe not all, but most of them, if you just kind of rejig it a little bit, you can turn it into an activity for 2 or more people.
Mm.
And in fact, when you start getting into that mindset, this is what I found anyway, as I got into that mindset, I began to think of actual games. Like one of the games that came to my mind is one that I actually never played a whole lot, but I know it's had a real resurgence over the last few years, Truth or Dare,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Lots of people playing Truth or Dare. And to be perfectly honest, probably the reason I didn't like Truth or Dare was because it was all about embarrassment and humiliation. Just how much can you lower yourself, to do something really disgusting because the Dare card said to do the Dare thing, right?
Right, right.
But the game doesn't have to be about humiliation. It doesn't have to be about making yourself feel embarrassed. It could be about building yourself up. In fact, it could be about building up the other people playing the game too. So what if you kind of rejig all your truth questions and all your dare questions to building people up? The truth ones could be about building yourself up, and the dare questions could be about building up others who are playing the game.
I love that.
Now that becomes an entirely different game. It's the same game.
Right.
It's just, but with a different motive, with a different aim in mind.
Well, I think there's so many things in life that we could do that to. When you take the context of, Truth for Dare, is really when you look at it, whatever your end goal is, you could really take a lot of, what we learned as kids or maybe young adults whenever you played it, but taking a simple game and turn it into something fun and educating and uplifting. It's really only bound by your imagination. And where do you plug, those pieces in? How could, like you said, Walt, how could you rejig or restructure the game and keep it the same, but yet the actions I dare you to, XYZ. Right. And so, why not have it something fun and uplifting, something that actually, instead of tears you down, builds you up, right?
Wouldn't that be a very different experience for just about everybody?
Right.
What are we used to when we deal with friends or people who are becoming friends, or colleges? Obviously, I'm thinking about college students, so that's where one place where it really happens in a big way. It happens in the military, I'm sure. Any kind of group activity, particularly in younger years, is going to have this kind of thing going on, this kind of relationship building. And most often, it's about tearing down. Most often, it's really, really unusual to have group activities where people are trying to build each other up in addition to building themselves up. In fact, I'm kind of stretching my memory and my imagination to kind of visualize what one that I can think of that actually did do that actually did build up. I can't think of one. I mean, have you ever had an experience like that you can remember?
I do remember doing one, and I don't know if you've done this one, the rope exercise, and talking about teamwork, right? Yes, so there's a couple different rope ones, where everybody, you get, it's a bunch of different strands of yarn or whatever, and everybody gets an end, and each arm has one, and you could be all tangled, and the idea is to work together to untangle it, right, without letting go. And if somebody lets go, unfortunately, that person's out. Now, does that have a little bit of maybe on the aspect of humiliation? Yes, you failed, you're out, maybe. But at the same time,
usually what happens is when the person lets go, everybody laughs oh well, you let go, too bad,
right? And then they stand out, right? And then the other aspect, and this really is no other unless they, I guess, fall on their butt, but where they'll blindfold you and they tie a rope in a circle. And where everybody pulls on the rope and goes from the seated position to standing. Right. And talking about everybody has to maintain the same tension, and you can't see who's across or side or whatever. And then, somebody is the facilitator, randomly taps people on the shoulder and removes them. And so then they can see at the end, there's just two people. And, it's all talking about teamwork and everything else, right? So it's really, and that, to me, that was the more interesting aspect of the rope exercise. And as a recruiter, many years ago, I used to facilitate what they called a ropes program, and where we would go into high schools and we would do these different team building exercises, what they called them. And, trying to, and of course there was a lot of different games, and octopus and different ones where you try to catch people, but you're all connected, and kind of crazy, but kind of fun at the same time. But it's what but going back to which ones are uplifting versus having a level of humiliation in them, right? It's like, oh, you lost. Well,
Yeah.
what do you got to lose? Can't we make it to where, not saying that everybody per se wins, but not to say and remove the aspect of somebody losing? Can't we just keep everybody on the even keel, right?
It's an interesting question. And one of the ways that I was kind of trying to apply it, Louise and I have been playing Scrabble recently. And I was thinking about, and Louise was thinking the same thing independent of me. We found this out shortly afterward. We were both trying to figure out, how do you turn Scrabble into an affirmative, build each other up game rather than who can win the game. And in the process of doing that, I kind of invented a new version of Scrabble where you don't actually have tiles. You can basically come up with any word you want to plug in crossword fashion, except that the word has to be something that's uplifting rather than.
I was just going to say something uplifting versus. Yeah.
But it also occurred to me, a lot of people like competitive games. Right. You know, they like the winner and the loser situation, and that they do get some uplift from that. So why not work out a way to have both? Some games can be competitive, other games can be cooperative.
Well, and it brings up the other question too. I get the aspect of having a winner and somebody that doesn't win, right? And does that always have to be negative? What makes it and what makes it negative if somebody says, yeah, well, the name loser, that's kind of, they're not the winner, so it's kind of negative. Well, what makes it negative? Is it because of maybe past experiences somebody had growing up in school that, oh, you're the loser, you didn't win, we're the winners, right? And you know how people can be. But
I got Queens, we are the champions. Running through my head right now.
Like lording over, right? Does it have to be a negative experience? You know, can we take losing and make it a positive aspect and still be uplifting? You know, I would counter at some level. I think you can. And the only reason that a lot of times we look at winning and losing in different connotations is because of our each individual perspectives.
Yes.
And how we were raised, because that's how we understand and process things, right?
Well, it's about attachment. I mean, really, whenever you're feeling that there's a winner or a loser, you're attached to the game. You're attached to the outcome in some way.
Right.
When the winner or loser aspect doesn't matter. Like Louise and I play Scrabble, and if we were to actually add up the scores, I win every time because I'm really, really good at it. But we don't look at it that way. We're just trying to put together the Scrabble puzzle. Right. So it doesn't really matter what the scores were at the end of the game.
Right.
It's not important. Unimportant.
You just wanted to have fun. You just wanted to play.
Yeah, see what we come up with. You know how we judge it? We judge it based on, can I put a word down that makes 2 or more words out of it?
Ooh, that would be challenging.
That's the fun part. That's why I do so well at Scrabble. So I'm good at using all 7 letters, which you get an extra score for, and I'm good at making crossword style stuff. So put one word on top of another, and then you get all these little words that add up. And I mean, it's just fun because you got a word this way and this way and this way and this way.
Your mind thinks that way, right? It's interesting to find out how other people think too and process information differently, because we are all different, but yet we're all connected.
I was so proud of her the other day, because the other day she came up with her first multi-word combination. I mean, she'd never, all up until that point, it was always just one word based on a letter that was on the board. She came up with her first one, and she was so proud of herself, and I was proud of her. I was probably more excited than she was, because I know how hard it is to do that first one.
Right.
It takes some doing to get it, you know. But she watched me. She watched the ones that I would come up with, and she learned from it, and then she found her first one. It was like, that was a breakthrough for both of us. We both got excited about it.
Well, cool. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah.
So you're right. It depends on it. Well, that's why I called it the attachment side. It depends on what you attach to. If you attach to winning and losing, well, you're going to get all excited or disappointed by winning or losing. If you attach to some other aspect of it, then you're going to attach to some other aspect of it.
Right.
So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying, if you like the idea of a games day that we do online virtually, obviously in the middle of COVID, we don't get together. And besides, most of us live, across the world from each other. So, we'll do it online. But if you're interested, contact me, let me know, and I'll start compiling the list. And when I have a good number of people, we're gonna do this thing. So let me know.
Oh, very cool.
Now, we do have one person who did use the form the way it is originally intended. She actually sent in a question for you to
Oh,
answer.
okay.
She needs a little psychic support here.
Oh,
So her name is Kelly. She
okay.
says, I am a new listener, and I was wondering if Dean has anything psychically coming in for a current love interest I have been pursuing.
Ooh.
I want to know if this is going to turn into a long-term relationship. Thanks in
Mm.
advance.
Well, here's what I would say first and foremost for anybody that's thinking about writing in a psychic when it comes to love interests. I'm not, everybody's waiting for me to say, don't. No. No, I'm not.
Don't.
I'm not gonna say that.
I hear
But
Homer
what I
Simpson,
would
don't
do a little Homer Simpson, right? But what I would share is this is that understand that understand that she's trying to get some validation of probably where her heart's guiding her and what she's feeling. Understand that anything with any psychic or medium, all they're going to be able to do is tell you where the energy is now. Because if you're coming into a partnership with an individual, whether it's romantic, business, regardless of the relationship, understand that it can change. Not
Yes.
saying that it's going to change bad. I'm not trying to tell Kelly that. What I'm trying to say is be aware that we all have free will. And if at some point somebody wanted to all of a sudden, maybe things weren't hot and spicy. Maybe sometimes I get some of the questions like, what are some things to do for the marriage or for the relationship or whatever? Say sometimes could somebody make different decisions to strengthen the real? Absolutely. Could somebody make a decision to walk away? Absolutely. So what I'm trying to say is that, keep an open mind, bear in mind when you get this. Now, with that in regard, I feel really good energy with this, Kelly, going forward, this new relationship, if you will. It does feel, if you do it, used an analogy of a canoe, right? And we all know that it's not really advisable to stand up in a canoe because it's really tippy. And unless you're standing right along that keel, right? Or you got outriggers, right? And so what I'm trying to say is this is the energy is really, I don't want to say super unstable, but it could go either one way or the other right now. But it feels really good. It feels like that kind of that young love, early relationship. Everything's about each other, all that. Like, oh my God, everything I think about, it's him or her or whatever. Right. And so it's in that stage. It's at, we call it the honeymoon stage, right? Everything's flowers, showering people with gifts. It's like, trying to woo the other individual or whatever. Everything's hot and steamy. That's great. And it's just like, where is it going to go? Because it's like, I'm not really sure where it's going to even out at. So that's the thing that I felt with it is when it came to, I'd call it canoe energy. I know maybe that's a new term I'll coin, Walt, canoe energy, because it's really, yeah, right. Or, kayak energy, because it's so, it can be very unstable. And, but at the same time, it's very agile. So it's not a bad thing. It's just very fluid at the moment, but it feels really good, really fresh. So, I wouldn't overthink it, Kelly, to be really honest with you. Just really enjoy, where you are currently. Um, will it turn out to be a long term or something pretty serious? I guess if you would, if I was a gambling man, which I'm not, I would say it will. But of course, again, I would say also there's an aspect of, again, we all have free will. But it feels the strength or the energy is pretty thick there. So it feels like it has longevity is what I'm trying to say. So no, it feels good for Kelly. So have fun, enjoy your time, be in love, express it, all that great stuff. So no, good things.
Some good points in there too. I mean, dynamic is the word that comes to my mind whenever I think about relationships, particularly good relationships.
Right.
Good relationships are always changing. They're always in flux. There's a stability at the base of it, And that stability always has to be there. If it doesn't stay there, it means that the two people are kind of going in different directions, and that's not
Right.
going to work. But as long as the stability is going to be there, hey, riding the waves is part of life. That's just
Right.
part of what's going to happen.
Well, and I'm sure you've seen this over the years too, Walt, but I can't believe the amount of people that ask. And of course, I get it. People want to kind of get an insider's peek at, where's the relation or energy with the relationship. What I would share is that again, it can be very dynamic and it can be very fluid at times. And it's really challenging when people come, should I stay with my boyfriend? Like, here's the thing. If you're asking me whether you should stay with your wife or your boyfriend or your husband or whatever, there's something, obviously a blind psych is going to tell you there's issues. The other piece is that, do you want to stay with them?
Yeah.
Are you willing? The first question to me is, or that I think, are you willing to put in the work? Are you both willing to put in the work to change the trajectory of your relationship? And if not, if only, you can't do it, one side puts in the work and whatever. So, but again, I think Walt used a great word is dynamic. It sums that up really well because it's so multifaceted. There's not just one thing, but understand that when you're asking about relationship advice, there's so many aspects that come to it. So,
and dynamic is a word that I find to be really helpful when looking at the relationship for the long perspective. And I don't mean early on, I mean later on in the relationship, looking back.
Yeah.
Because I think about my relationship with Louise, and I'll talk about my relationship with Louise with somebody else. Say, the dynamics of the relationship are such and such. I never say the statics of the relationship are such and such. We always say the word dynamic, don't we? We don't say static. Why? Because the dynamic is where the relationship is.
Right.
The relationship is, if the moment that the relationship becomes static is the moment that it becomes stale. And a stale relationship is one that basically just got abandoned. People stopped tending to it.
Sure.
Now, I do kind of fall into a minority category in that, unlike most people, I actually don't think relationships are something you have to work at. I actually believe that the most important part of working, if you want to call it that, in a relationship is actually the work you do on yourself. That if you do the work on yourself, and if your partner does the work on himself or herself, the relationship is going to work. At that point, now it's just a question of, do you want to stay in the relationship? And that makes it really, really easy. There's no pain involved. It's like, oh, well, it's either yes, I want this, or no, I don't want that. And it's just that straightforward. But if you don't do the work, that's where all the craziness comes in. The people who don't work on themselves, not on the relationship, the people who don't work on building up their own self-love, like we were talking about before. We were talking about the games to play to build up self-love. If you don't work on building up your self-love, you don't have love to give in a relationship. And the same thing is true for your partner. If you don't build up the love, you've got nothing to give. So you want to make a relationship work, build your own love within yourself.
Right.
There's nothing, I mean, mirror exercises are a great way to do that, but there are lots of different ways to do it. The bottom line, though, is Louise and I kind of talked about this when we first met. Now, we've been together 22 plus years now. But when the first year that we met, we were in our early 40s, and it was my first really successful relationship. I had to wait to my 40s for my first really successful relationship. It was also her first really successful one. She'd had a couple of long-termers, but they had, calling them successful would be really stretching a point. They were pretty miserable. And we asked each other, well, why is it we didn't meet before now? And then within minutes, we came up with the answer. Neither one of us had done enough work by that point. Early in our lives, we just weren't ready for that relationship because we hadn't built ourselves up. We hadn't built up our self-love. And I mean, at the time, I didn't even know what that building my self-love was important. It wasn't even on my radar. So it wasn't something I even knew how to do. I ended up doing it subconsciously, I guess is the best way to say it. I didn't realize that I was building self-love. I just ended up doing it because of other things I was trying to do.
Sure.
But ultimately, those are the activities that help make myself a whole person. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I became a more whole person, and she became a whole person. So when we met, well, now it worked because we're whole people. We like each other. We're attracted to each other. And I mean, the biggest thing is we just clicked. So that's why I said earlier, I don't really believe that relationships have to have lots of conflict to be resolved and compromised and so forth. Because, well, for Louise and me, the relationship that we have, we don't have a whole lot of disagreements. And when disagreements do come up, they go away in about 5 seconds. I mean, they just don't last very long. Why? Because we don't attach to them. We don't attach to them in any way whatsoever, any way, shape, form, manner. It just, probably like the worst that we've ever had, on times where there was like, I don't know, something in the news, something political or whatever. We weren't quite in alignment with each other on what the other person's viewpoint was, but we had enough self-love built up that we were just willing to let the other person be who they were. And so it just didn't last. And the it being the angst, the uncomfortable thing, the conflict, the chaos, it just didn't, it goes away.
Well, and couldn't we use that? I mean, really, you take that and broaden the picture and talking about the relationship with their fellow man or woman, and regardless of somebody's position on something or whatever the aspect of, if we're not dealing with, that internal dialogue that isn't supporting us, I mean, we can be in a place that, is just very, open to have that conversation with folks, or just be like, you know what, it's all right to agree to disagree and still be okay. And not, it's like, I don't have to, get all crazy. And,
exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing is, I know that we're all dealing with some form of past trauma, and, at some level. And, you talked about, Walt, I think you talked a huge one about doing that inner work, the self work. And so many folks out there wanting to help others, but they haven't done the work themselves. So it'll only go so far. And I think that is personally speaking, I want to say self-work was for me, at least, the most difficult and the scariest, because I had to look at my own shit. I had to deal with my own stuff,
and you can't
not
get away
other
with
people's
anything.
stuff, because I can look at other people's stuff all day, right. And because it's not mine. But when I have to take ownership of my own stuff, then it, it's like, that's, I don't want to own it. So, I think it's, at least back then I didn't. And now it's just like, yeah, I don't like it, but yeah, that's me. And then, and then I move on. It's, I don't have to, it doesn't have to, just pound me into the earth, so to speak. But yeah, I think that's huge. And, it's a great point. Now, how long have, you and your wife been together, did you say?
Well, we celebrated our 21st last September.
Oh, wow.
So, and we've been
Happy
together a year
anniversary.
before that. So thank you. Yeah. So 22 and a half years, almost 23 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
So, well, and, and
and the best part on our wedding day, Louise was going to the ladies and overheard a friend of mine say, "It'll never last."
I love those, right? It'll never last.
Yeah. Well, sorry, guys.
Right. Yeah. Sorry to throw that in your face. Interesting, when my wife and I were dating at the time, and one of the, I thought it was so odd back then, but because I wasn't aware, right, of my inner self, if you will. But one of the questions that I asked was, before, I even proposed, was, all I need to know is that you love yourself. Do you love yourself? And I asked her that. I said, point blank, do you, I need to know, do you love yourself? Not me, not your dad, not your parents, not whomever. Do you yourself? And I remember her being kind of taken back, like nobody had asked her that. And, thinking back to that question, I remember thinking, who was that? I must have been channeling somebody good. Like, you need to ask that. So, and then it's like, you'll reflect back on this and won't have a clue. But, and it was something, perhaps it was and I trust that it was a divine thing, but, and it was like, yeah. If somebody would have asked me back then, I would have been like, gosh, I don't know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's a big question. That's a deep one. When we really, like, no PS, do you really love yourself? And blank,
It's a great question. In
you
fact,
know?
I mentioned that I have actually identified what my core message is with the talk that I'm putting together, and it is about self-love. But the
Mm,
core message is even more specific than that. It's that we all love we all love ourselves, rather. We all have self-love. Even those
right.
who have, really bad, um, negative,
Sure.
dysfunctional type behaviors love themselves. The question isn't, do you love yourself? In my opinion, the question is, how much do you love yourself?
Mm,
And the
that's a
reason I
good
phrase it
question.
that way is what I finally realized. It took me 63 years to realize this, but I figure, well, I'm better than most. Some people don't ever realize it.
You're still breathing, so we're
Yeah, that's right.
figured
Yeah,
that out, right?
exactly. But I finally realized you can't grow your self love too much. We have
Mm,
been taught, I don't know about you, I was certainly taught growing up that you don't want to build your self-love too much. Now, they didn't phrase it that way, but
right.
the messages were really, really clear. It was all about, you're supposed to be loving of others, and you are not supposed to get your ego
Yep.
built up too
Yep.
big, and you don't want to be narcissistic about
Be
stuff and
very
so forth.
humble. Yes.
But when
Yes.
I worked through all that stuff, I finally realized that a lot of it had some, to borrow the phrase, fake news built into it. Like the idea that a narcissist actually loves himself. Well, no, actually, narcissists love themselves very, very little. That's what makes them narcissistic. Something that Monique and I were talking about last Wednesday. You really can't truly love yourself too much. In fact, the more you love yourself, the higher your vibration gets.
Mm.
And I
Hmm.
mean, in our circles, we know how important it is to be high vibe.
Right.
And there are
Right.
some people who aspire to be super high vibe, so high vibe that they probably leave their bodies for good and go on to the higher realms.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right. Yep.
well, those are high levels of love. That's extremely high levels of self
Right.
love. That's how you get there. So recognizing that fact tells me, well, that means throughout our lives as humans, the most important thing we can do every day, day in, day out, is increase incrementally, little tiny steps, increase our self love. Because when
Mm.
we do, it's literally like increasing our ability to attract something into our lives. It's the same process.
Sure. Sure.
And what I was recognizing is, we have lots of philosophers in this realm that we deal in. There's the Abrahams of the world, Neville Goddards of the world, the Tony Robbins, Napoleon Hill. I mean, there's a whole bunch,
Sure.
all touching on various aspects of this stuff. And the one thing that they all have in common is that they're trying to find ways to help you understand how the whole cosmos works. Like Neville Goddard talks about how the original question is I am, or not question, the original statement of identity is I am, and it is a statement of consciousness. What occurred to me is consciousness and I amness come out of self-love. So self-love actually comes before all of that. So really, in my view, self-love is the foundation for everything.
Mm.
And to make things really interesting, we're all connected. So that self-love, here's the really cool part. When we reach a certain level that feeds us all the love that we need for ourselves, and then go beyond that level, regardless of whether we intend to give it to somebody else, it goes to somebody else because we're all connected. So the other part that goes along with this is really cool is you don't have to worry about making sure you love others. All you have to do is build your self-love up. At some point, you're going to overflow and you're going to end up loving others regardless of whether you intended to or not.
Right.
You don't have to plan anything in this regard. You just do. There's really no way I'm going to keep all this self-love to myself. It's impossible. You can't do it.
Do we just do, or do we just be?
Well, it depends on what you call doing, I suppose. I mean, I'm kind of different from most people. Most people think of doing in terms of anything that you do externally, whereas I think that
Sure.
doing includes the internal work. So, but
Sure.
it's how you apply the labels
Semantics,
more than
right?
anything
Yeah,
else.
but
Yeah, it's
right. No.
semantics.
But I love that aspect of, yeah, that, the rate, or I don't want to call it radiation effect, but really you are radiating, you
You
are
do.
being love, And and we all understand this, is love is the most highest vibrating frequency in the universe, right?
It
Or at
is.
least to our knowledge. And it's fascinating stuff, what it can do, what it where it can take you, what it can achieve, as far as just everything, as far as the law of attraction, sickness. I mean, converting sickness to health. I mean, just the physical properties and energetic properties of it, right? Just changing states of being, I just think is so fascinating.
It is.
But yeah, absolutely right. So very cool stuff. I love that.
So this is like a long-winded way to help Kelly. I actually have one other thought for Kelly. This isn't easy to do necessarily because it's so easy. Louis D'Souza yesterday was talking about how love can be blind, which basically means when in the early stages of love, we only see the parts that we like, and we tend to ignore the parts that we don't like. He was actually arguing that's a good thing to stick with. It's a good policy to follow. Don't worry about the stuff you don't like so much. Just love the parts that you like. And there's a good argument to be made there. What I was thinking about it is kind of like this. I know anyway. I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for anybody else. I know with anybody that I meet, if I just kind of sit with it for a moment and really get honest with myself, not depressive. I want to make sure that I'm clear here. I'm not talking about diving into the stuff that I'm afraid about or the stuff that I'm angry about or whatever. If I just look at the stuff in terms of how does it actually feel within me about person X, I know instantly whether or not I am going to connect with person X. I don't mean necessarily a romantic relationship. I mean, most of my relationships, like with you guys, my co-hosts, these are friend relationships.
Right.
We're just, we're friends doing a show together. But I know instantly that's how I know who I want to bring onto the show as a co-host. I don't really, well, I kind of do interviews, but the interviews are like bring a person on as a guest and then get to know them. And I know within 5 minutes whether or not I want to continue with that person. With you, I knew exactly within 5 minutes. Yeah, I want this guy. I want a part of the show. I had no idea where to fit you into the schedule at that point, but I figured, it'll all iron itself out at some point, and it did.
It'll work out.
But I know instantly, just
Sure.
if I'm honest with myself. So Kelly, I'm suggesting deep down, not what you're afraid of, but do you feel deep down that this actually is somebody you would like having a long-term relationship with? Put aside the feelings of the steaminess and how exciting it is to fall in love and all that. Right. Deep down whether or not that relationship feels good to you. That's your best indicator. Yeah. The other thing I want to point out is something that Cindy Chavez pointed out to me in a story that she told about, 4 or 5 weeks ago, and she's reiterated it a few times since then. She has been in 2 marriages. Her first marriage was very verbally abusive, and it took her a long time to get out of it. Her second marriage is just perfect. Scott's a great guy. But her first marriage just wasn't working out. And she was confused by it. She stuck with it for a long time because early on she had gotten a sign that said, yes, this is the right guy. And this isn't just, some psychic told her. She'd gotten like these really strong signs. This is a great relationship. But she'd forgotten something. The sign you got yesterday isn't today's sign. The signs change. And just because yesterday's sign was good doesn't mean tomorrow's sign is going to be the same sign. That's the dynamic nature of relationships.
Just like the stock market, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Today's stocks might be worth more than tomorrow's.
You never know. Yeah. So the point is, you don't look for signs for the purpose of trying to figure out what's going to happen for the rest of your life.
Right.
You look for the sign to find out what's your current state. Where are you at right now? That's what the sign tells you. Yeah. If you're driving on the highway, I've told this analogy a few times lately. If you're driving on the highway and you're in Pennsylvania and you see a sign that says, Richmond, Virginia, 350 miles or something like that. Well, 5 hours later or 7 hours later, you missed the exit for Richmond. Well, yeah, but the sign said it was 350 miles. Well, that was 7 hours ago.
Right.
So keep signs in context. Signs and indications and psychic readings and all that, they're just what's going on in that moment. It doesn't mean that that's fixed forever. Thank God. Otherwise, life would be a pretty boring proposition.
It would be boring. It really would. It would be super boring, truly. Truly, truly. No, that's great reminder, Walt. That, and it's in and just to summarize that, really talking about listening to your intuition, and energy is always the state of, that we're in is always changing. So
By the
learn.
way, that activity of checking within, great, and you know this too, great exercise for building self-love. Just
Absolutely.
checking for that. Just even if you aren't getting it the first time, even I know for me, I wasn't getting anything. I was like, testing, is this thing on?
You're right. Right.
But just the activity of repeatedly going back and asking, well, what am I really feeling about that? How does
Yeah.
that, forget psychic messages, forget voices in the ear or whatever. What am I feeling about that?
Yeah.
Just asking that over and over again, that's a self-love building exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a
Mm-hmm.
powerful
No,
one.
for sure. For sure. And also if we're aligned with it, right? It's like sometimes in life we're pushing through and we just keep on hitting that nail on the head because we feel we need to, day in, day out, and we're just not aligned with it anymore. So,
Mm.
it's just like, how do you feel about it? I don't know. It's changed. And it's like, well, changed how? Are you still in alignment with it? Whether it's the company, a business, romantic relationship, whatever. It's like, no, something's changed. And it's like, okay, well, what is it? And, how do you want to proceed? You know, is it within your power to change how you want, your dynamic? Or is it out of your hands? Is it, and start going into the nuances, but from there, like you share, Walt, it's ever changing. So it is very interesting. So for sure.
By the way, the ever-changing aspect, that's where the fun is.
It is. And it's a good thing because we do not want energy that is static. Any energy or emotion that is static is not, number one, healthy to us. I want to really stress this. That is where disease starts. That
Yes.
is where, really all the negativity, really, if you will, the zero mark for the negativity scale, if you want to put a scale in your head. And then we start in a downward spiral, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want to be stagnant. We always want to be somehow the energy moving in our life. And I get it. Some people like, oh my God, Dean, there's so much chaos. And it's like, well, it can be gentle, but at the same time, it's energy and movement is good because change is needed. And if we get in a stagnant pattern, that you just think of water sitting still, right? What does it breed? Bacteria, bugs, all the, the nasties. But water in motion, you think of a stream, purifies itself. It's moving. It's powerful, right? That movement. And that's the same with energy. So keep it moving, whatever that is, through self-love again,
That's
movement,
beautiful.
expression, self-love, all those things.
They are
But,
what are important in life. There's no doubt about it.
it
And like
is. And yeah, for sure.
and like you were saying, it's up to us which ones we're going to focus on. We don't. It can be chaos if you really want the chaos, but it doesn't have to be. Change your focus over to the stuff that you like, and it turns into something a whole lot gentler and nicer. So it's up to you, really, which way you're going
I've
to go on.
experienced the chaos. I'm good. I'll
Yeah,
bypass
I'm
the
good with that.
chaos
Okay,
phase.
we're done with that.
I'm good.
Thank
I'll
you.
take the
Yeah,
I'll take the
next.
gentle, yes, the kind and gentle change. Yes. Been there. So
I think
yes,
we're
I
in
think we
agreement
all
on
have,
that.
right?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, that's a good place to wind up. So this has been great as usual. Thank you very much, Dean. I'm really glad that you are a member of the team now, and
Oh, thank you,
appreciate your
Walt. Thank you
contributions.
for, for asking me to come on, be your co-host. It's been of course an honor, and it's always fun to get to join you every week and chat about great things, and
It is, yeah.
get to
Plus, we have a
connect to
great
folks
listener
as well.
bunch too. I mean, we have like
Yeah.
the best listener base in the world. And that's what makes it really
I
worthwhile.
know
So
the feedback is so
yeah,
great. I love it.
really
So
cool. So thank you guys very much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today.
bye
Goodbye,
bye.
everybody.